I didn't expect to fall for someone at 3 in the morning, under flickering fluorescent lights, with the smell of antiseptic stuck in my nose. But that's the thing about night shifts. You don't expect anything, and somehow everything sneaks up on you anyway. I'm Isaac Cole, and back then I was working nights as a hospital orderly. Not because I loved it, but because nights paid better, and I needed the money. Less management, fewer patients awake, long stretches of quiet broken up by sudden chaos. You learn to live in that in-between space, half asleep, half alert, like the rest of the world doesn't quite exist. That's where Julian Park came in. He was new. I noticed him on his first night because he looked way too put together for 11 p.m. Clean sneakers, sleeves rolled just right, hair still behaving. Most people on nights look like they're slowly unraveling. Julian looked like he'd just stepped out of a different timeline. Our supervisor paired us up without ceremony. "Isaac, you're showing Julian the ropes. Try not to scare him off." Julian smiled at me, quick and polite. "I'll do my best not to slow you down." Something about his voice stuck with me. Calm, steady. The kind of voice you'd want to hear if things went sideways. The first few hours were routine. Transporting patients, restocking linens, wiping down gurneys, in the eerie quiet that only exists after midnight. The hospital felt like a different building at night. Longer hallways, softer echoes, shadows that didn't quite sit still. Around 1 a.m., we ended up in the break room, both pretending we weren't exhausted. "You always work nights?" Julian asked, pouring coffee that looked strong enough to remove paint. "Yeah, been on nights almost 2 years," I said. "You?" He shrugged. "Temporary, I think. I like the quiet, though." That caught my attention. Most people hated the quiet. The quiet made you think. As the shift dragged on, something subtle started to happen. We fell into a rhythm. He matched my pace without trying, anticipated things before I said them. When we pushed a patient down the hall, our hands brushed on the rail, and neither of us pulled away too fast. It wasn't dramatic. No lightning bolt moment. Just awareness. At around 3 a.m., the hospital settled into that deep lull. Fewer call lights. Even the machines seemed to beep more gently. We were restocking supplies in an empty wing. The lights dimmed, the city outside nothing but distant orange dots through narrow windows. Julian leaned against a cart and exhaled. "It's weird," he said quietly. "Feels like we're the only people awake in the world." I nodded. "Yeah, that's nights. Feels unreal sometimes." He looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was seeing me outside of uniforms and job titles. I felt it in my chest. Something warm, unexpected. That was the moment I realized the silence between us wasn't empty. It was full, and neither of us was in a hurry to break it. After that night, I told myself not to read into it. That's the rule with night shifts. You don't get attached. People pass through. Schedules change. Someone always ends up switching to days or quitting outright because their body finally gives up. You keep things light, professional, contained. Except Julian kept showing up. Same days as me, same quiet competence. Same habit of standing just a little too close when we talked, like the space between us didn't matter to him. Or maybe he noticed it mattered to me and didn't mind. A week in, the hospital felt less empty when he was around. We started sharing the small stuff. Complaints about broken elevators. Which vending machine snacks were worth the money. How time seemed to stretch between 2 and 4 a.m. like the universe was messing with us. One night we got stuck waiting outside imaging while a patient was inside. The hallway lights were dimmed, the air cool and humming softly. "You ever forget what day it is?" Julian asked. "All the time," I said. "My brain thinks it's always Tuesday." He laughed quietly. "Same. My friends text me like I'm avoiding them. I'm just asleep when they're alive." There was something honest in that, a shared isolation. Nights do that. They pull you out of the regular world and leave you with whoever's left awake. Around 2:30, a call came in to move equipment down to the lower floor. Not urgent, just tedious. The service elevator was slow, ancient, the kind that groaned like it resented being used. We stepped inside, and the doors slid shut with a heavy thud. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The elevator crawled downward. The lights flickered once, then twice. Julian looked up. "That's normal, right?" Before I could answer, the elevator jolted and stopped. Silence. Then the emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in a dull red glow. "Great," I muttered. "Of course." Julian let out a breath, more amused than scared. "So this is my official night shift initiation?" "Pretty much," I said. "Welcome." We radioed maintenance. They told us it might take a bit, so there we were, alone, in a stalled elevator, in the middle of the night. The space felt smaller with every second. Julian leaned back against the wall, arms crossed loosely. "You don't seem stressed." "I've been stuck longer," I said. "You kind of stopped fighting it." He studied me again, that same focused look. "You're steady. That's rare." The word hit harder than I expected. "Thanks," I said quietly. The elevator hummed softly, doing nothing. The red light cast shadows across his face, softened his features. I noticed things I hadn't let myself notice before. The faint, tired lines near his eyes, the way his jaw tensed when he was thinking. "You ever feel like nights strip things down?" he asked after a while. "Like, there's less pretending." I swallowed. "Yeah, I do." Our shoulders brushed when the elevator shifted slightly. Neither of us moved away. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It felt intentional. Julian's voice dropped. "I'm glad they paired me with you." My heart picked up, slow but heavy. Me too. When the elevator finally lurched back to life, I felt a strange disappointment. Like something unfinished had been interrupted. As the doors opened, Julian glanced at me, just briefly. But in that look was a question. And I knew whatever was happening between us wasn't just about killing time on a night shift anymore. It was becoming something we'd both started waiting for. After the elevator incident, things shifted quietly but unmistakably. We didn't talk about it outright. That would have broken the spell. Instead, it showed up in smaller ways. Julian started timing his breaks with mine. I caught myself listening for his footsteps in the hallway before I even realized what I was doing. When our shifts overlapped, the night felt anchored. One night around 1 a.m., we were assigned to monitor a low-traffic wing, mostly post-op rooms where patients were finally sleeping. The lights were dimmed almost to nothing, just enough to see the floor shine faintly. We sat at the desk, paperwork spread out, the hum of machines like a slow breath. Julian stretched, rolling his shoulders. "I didn't realize how physical this job is," he said. I smirked. "Give it another month. Your back will start filing complaints." He laughed softly, then went quiet. Not awkward quiet. Thoughtful. "You ever miss days?" he asked. I thought about it. About sunlight, about weekends that didn't blur together. Sometimes. But nights fit me better than I expected. He nodded. "Yeah, me too." I noticed the way his knee bounced slightly, like he had energy he didn't know what to do with. Without really thinking, I reached out and steadied it. It was instinctive, casual. Except it wasn't. My hand rested on his knee, warm, solid, real. Julian froze, not pulling away, not leaning in, just holding the moment. His eyes flicked down to my hand, then back up to my face. I should have moved. I knew that. I didn't. The silence stretched, thick but not heavy. "You okay?" I asked, my voice lower than usual. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I am." He didn't ask me to move my hand, so I left it there another second. Then another. When I finally pulled back, it felt like stepping away from a ledge. We went back to our tasks, but the air had changed. Charged. Like something had been said without words. Later that night, we took a walk down the empty corridor, just to stay awake. The windows at the end looked out over the city, dark, scattered with lights, like a second sky on the ground. Julian stopped there. "You know," he said, "I didn't expect to connect with anyone here." "Me neither," I said. He turned slightly toward me, close enough that I could smell his soap, clean and faint. "I'm glad I did." My chest tightened. Not fear, recognition. "Julian," I started, not even sure what I was going to say. He met my eyes. "Yeah?" Before I could answer, a call crackled over the radio. We were needed upstairs. The moment snapped, but not broken. Just paused. As we walked, our hands brushed again. This time, our fingers briefly linked. Intentional, noticeable. Neither of us said a word. But that touch stayed with me for the rest of the shift. Through the sunrise, creeping in pale and indifferent. Through the exhaustion. Through the quiet satisfaction that came from knowing I wasn't imagining it. Whatever was growing between us, it was real, and it was only getting harder to pretend otherwise. By the next week, the tension between us had become impossible to ignore. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was the way Julian remembered things I mentioned once in passing. How he'd wordlessly hand me gloves before I even asked. How our conversations drifted past surface-level stuff when the night got quiet enough. Still, neither of us crossed the line. Until the night everything went sideways. It was just after 4 a.m., that dead hour when your body feels hollowed out and your thoughts get louder. A patient coded in one of the older wings. Alarms, footsteps, voices cutting through the calm like broken glass. Julian and I moved without thinking. That's the thing about working nights together. You start operating as a unit. No wasted words. No hesitation. We helped where we could. Stayed out of the way where we couldn't. Afterward, the hallway smelled sharp and metallic. Adrenaline still buzzing in my veins. The patient didn't make it. We stood near the supply room afterward, both of us quiet, the weight of it settling in. Death always felt heavier at night. Fewer distractions. No daylight to soften it. Julian exhaled slowly, rubbing his face. "I hate this part." "Yeah," I said. "Me too." He looked shaken in a way I hadn't seen before. Not dramatic, just raw. Like the night had finally gotten under his skin. "Can we?" He stopped, swallowed. "Can we take a minute, somewhere quiet?" I nodded immediately. "Yeah, of course." We slipped into a small staff room, barely anyone used anymore. One dim light. 2 chairs. A vending machine humming like it didn't care about anything at all. Julian sat, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "I didn't think it would hit me like that," he said. "I thought I was handling it." I leaned against the counter, then thought better of it and moved closer. "You don't have to handle it alone." He looked up at me then. Really looked. His eyes were tired, edges red, defenses thin. "That's the thing," he said quietly. "When I'm with you, I don't feel alone, and that scares me." My chest tightened, not unpleasantly. Why? Because I didn't come here expecting this. He gestured vaguely between us. Whatever this is. The room felt too small, too honest. I took a breath. Neither did I. Silence stretched. Thick, fragile. Julian stood, slowly, like he wasn't sure if the ground would hold him. He stopped a foot away from me. "Isaac," he said, voice low. "If I'm wrong about this, tell me now." My heart was loud in my ears. "You're not wrong. That was all it took." He leaned in. Not rushed, not desperate, careful, asking. I met him halfway. The kiss was soft at first, almost tentative, like we were still making sure this was real. His hand hovered at my side before resting there, warm and steady. Everything else fell away. The hospital, the shift, the night. When we pulled back, we didn't say anything. We didn't need to. Julian rested his forehead against mine, breathing me in. "We should probably go back," he murmured. "Yeah," I said. "We should." But neither of us moved right away. Because once you cross that line, even gently, there's no one feeling it. And I knew then, nights were never going to be just work again. After that night, we became careful in a way that felt almost intimate on its own. Not distant, just aware. Like we were holding something fragile between us and didn't want to drop it under the weight of fluorescent lights and security cameras. At work, we kept things professional. No lingering touches. No loaded looks if anyone else was around. But when the halls emptied out, when the night settled deep into its bones, it was like gravity pulled us back together. We started taking our breaks outside. There was a service exit near the back of the hospital that led to a narrow concrete loading area. Not pretty. Not meant for hanging around. But at 3 a.m. it was quiet, cool, and blessedly real. The city hummed distantly, like it was breathing in its sleep. Julian leaned against the wall, jacket zipped up, steam curling from his coffee. "I keep replaying it," he admitted one night. "That kiss." "Me too," I said. He smiled. Small, almost shy. It was a look I hadn't seen on him before. Good. We didn't rush things. That surprised me. Everything about nights pushes you toward intensity. Short timelines, shared exhaustion. The feeling that normal rules don't apply. But with Julian, slow felt right. Necessary. Instead of jumping ahead, we talked. About why he chose hospital work. About the ex he never really got over but knew wasn't coming back. About how I learned to live in the margins. Night shifts, quiet friendships, avoiding things that felt too loud. "One day," he said, staring out at the empty lot, "this will end. Nights, I mean." "Yeah," I said. "They always do." He glanced at me. "You think we end with them?" The question hit harder than any kiss. I didn't answer right away. "I don't know, but I don't think this is just a night thing." He nodded slowly, like that was the answer he hoped for but hadn't expected. A few shifts later, things tested us. Julian got offered a temporary rotation. Days, different department, better hours, better visibility. The kind of opportunity you're not supposed to hesitate over. He told me near the end of shift, voice careful, "I haven't said yes yet." I felt the night stretch around us, suddenly too big. "You should take it." "I was hoping you wouldn't say that." I met his eyes. "I don't want to be the reason you don't." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "What if you're the reason I want to stay?" That scared me more than the idea of him leaving. Because it meant this wasn't just comfort anymore. It wasn't just proximity or shared silence. It was a choice. When the sun came up that morning, pale and indifferent, we stood side by side watching it bleed into the sky. The hospital was waking up. Day staff arriving. The world taking over again. Julian brushed his fingers against mine. "Barely there, but enough." "No matter what happens," he said, "this mattered." I closed my hand around his. Just for a second. It still does. And for the first time since I started working nights, I didn't dread the idea of morning. I just wondered what it would ask of us next. Julian didn't take the day rotation right away. He asked for a week. That week stretched in strange ways. Every shift felt heavier, like we were both aware time had started moving again after being suspended just for us. The hospital felt louder, brighter, less forgiving. We still worked side by side, but there was an edge to everything now. Every almost touch carried the weight of maybe this is the last time. Every shared look asked questions we weren't ready to answer out loud. One night, close to the end of that week, things slowed down earlier than usual. By 2 a.m., most of the wing was asleep. We were assigned to monitor the back corridor near storage. Low priority, low traffic. Julian paced a little, restless. "You ever feel like you're standing on the edge of something?" he asked. "All the time," I said, "especially at night." He stopped pacing and looked at me. "I don't want this to be something I only remember." That landed deep. "Then, don't let it be." He laughed softly, shaking his head. You make it sound simple. It's not, I said, but it's honest. We ended up back at the service exit again, the cool air biting just enough to keep us awake. The city was quieter than usual, like it was listening. Julian leaned his shoulder against mine. This time, I didn't pretend it was accidental. If I go to days, he said, everything changes. Yeah, but if I stay, he trailed off. I turned to face him. Then you're staying for more than the schedule. He nodded, eyes searching my face. Would you want that? The question wasn't dramatic. No grand declarations. Just truth. Raw and waiting. Yes, I said. No hesitation. I would. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. His hand found mine, fingers threading together with a familiarity that surprised both of us. I was afraid to ask, he admitted. I squeezed his hand. Me too. We didn't kiss that night. Instead, we stood there holding hands in the dark, letting the night witness something quieter but stronger than urgency, a decision. At the end of the shift, Julian walked me to my car. The sky was just starting to lighten, that thin gray blue that meant night was giving up. I told them no, he said casually, like he wasn't changing the shape of things. I stopped walking. You did? He nodded. I want to see where this goes. Where we go. I didn't trust my voice, so I pulled him in instead. The kiss this time was different. Deeper. Sure of itself. No asking. Just knowing. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine again, smiling. Guess I'm a night person now, he said. I smiled back. Careful. Nights have a way of sticking. As I drove home, exhausted and wired all at once, I realized something had shifted permanently. The night hadn't just given me someone. It had given me a reason to step into whatever came after. The strange thing was how normal everything became, and how different it felt at the same time. Julian staying on nights didn't magically simplify things. If anything, it made them more real. We weren't living in a bubble anymore. We were choosing the same hard hours, the same upside-down schedule, knowing it came with consequences. We started seeing each other outside the hospital. Nothing flashy. Early breakfasts after shifts, when the rest of the city was just waking up. Greasy eggs, burnt coffee, our scrubs replaced by hoodies and tired smiles. We'd sit across from each other, sunlight creeping in through the windows, and laugh about how weird it felt to be awake while everyone else was starting their day. This feels illegal, Julian joked once, stirring sugar into his coffee, like we're cheating time. I watched the way light hit his face, softer than the hospital ever allowed. Yeah, but I like it. At work, we were still careful, but the ease between us deepened. We trusted each other now, not just with attraction, but with the ugly stuff. Bad nights, short tempers, moments when one of us shut down. One night, Julian snapped at me over something stupid, a missing chart, a miscommunication. The words came out sharper than he meant. I stepped back, surprised. Immediately, regret crossed his face. Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean... I know, I said, calmer than I felt. It's been a long night. Later, during break, he found me by the lockers. Thank you for not shutting me out, he said quietly. I shrugged. We're human. Nights don't make us saints. That honesty, that permission to be imperfect, bound us tighter than anything else. Months passed like that. Seasons changed without us noticing. Nights grew colder, then lighter again. Somewhere along the way, Julian started leaving things in my apartment. A spare toothbrush. A hoodie. His presence stopped feeling temporary. One morning, after a brutal shift, we lay in my bed, curtains half drawn, the world muted. You ever think about what comes next? He asked, tracing lazy circles on my arm. Sometimes, I admitted. used to scare me. And now? I turned toward him. Now I think, whatever it is, I don't want to face it alone. He smiled, slow and sure. Good, because I'm terrible at being alone. Eventually, the hospital changed too. New staff. New policies. The night crew shifted around us. But we stayed steady, a constant in a place built on impermanence. One night, standing at the end of the corridor, lights low, Julian took my hand openly for the first time. No hiding. No checking who might see. My heart skipped. You sure? He squeezed my hand. Yeah, I am. No one said anything. The world didn't end. The night just accepted it. And in that quiet acceptance, I realized something profound. What started in silence hadn't stayed there. It had learned how to exist in the light, too. The thing about nights is that they don't last forever, even when you wish they would. The hospital announced restructuring the following spring. Budget shifts, staffing changes, a slow, inevitable push to rotate people back onto days. It wasn't personal. It never is. Systems don't fall in love with you. Julian got the email first. He didn't tell me right away. I could feel it, though. Something held back, a tension under his words. Nights teach you to read what isn't said. Finally, near the end of his shift, he stopped me in the hallway, where we'd once stood, pretending not to touch. I got offered days again, he said. I nodded. I'd been waiting for it. Okay, permanent this time. I took a breath. Okay. He searched my face. You're not mad? No, I said honestly. I'm scared. That's different. He smiled faintly. Good, because I said yes. The words landed gently, but firmly. I can't stay in this forever, he went on. As much as I love what nights gave me, I don't want us to only survive in the dark. That did it. That cracked something open in my chest. So I said, what happens to us? Julian stepped closer, lowering his voice. We stopped letting the schedule decide. His last night shift felt heavier than I expected. We worked quietly, efficiently, like we always had, but underneath it was the awareness that this version of us was ending. Near dawn, we went back to the service exit one last time. The sky was already lightening, the city stretching awake. Funny, Julian said. This is where everything started. And where it ends. I said. He shook his head. No, where it changes. He reached for my hand, the same way he always did. Steady, sure. I don't want to be someone you only loved at night. I squeezed his fingers. You're not. When the sun finally broke the horizon, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like release. Julian moved to days. I stayed on nights a while longer. We learned each other in a new rhythm. Weekends, evenings, shared dinners that didn't come with exhaustion baked in. It wasn't easier, but it was real. Months later, I switched too. Not for him, but because I was ready. Because the night had done its work. Sometimes, when I walk past the hospital late in the evening, I still feel it. The quiet, the hum, the way closeness can grow when the world isn't looking. Nights gave me Julian, but more than that, they taught me something important. Some connections are born in silence, but they don't have to live there. They can follow you into the light. I didn't think I'd miss nights as much as I did. Not the exhaustion. Not the way time used to blur until my body felt borrowed, but the quiet certainty of them. The way the world stripped itself down and left you with what mattered. Julian noticed before I said anything. You're staring again, he said, one evening, standing in our kitchen while pasta boiled over slightly. I leaned against the counter. Just thinking. About nights? He asked, like it was obvious. I smiled. Yeah. He turned the stove down and stepped closer. You regret switching? No, I said immediately. I regret thinking nights were the only place something like us could exist. That made him pause. We'd been living together almost a year by then. Real living. Rent, groceries, laundry arguments, his shoes always by the door. The romance didn't disappear, but it changed shape. Less urgency, more intention. Some evenings we barely talked, just shared space. Other nights we stayed up too late, talking like we used to during breaks at 3 a.m., only now the lights were warm and the silence felt earned. One weekend, we drove past the hospital without planning to. The building looked smaller in daylight. Ordinary. Julian slowed the car. Weird seeing it like this. Yeah, I said. Feels like a past life. He parked for a moment, engine idling. Neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. You know, he said finally, I think nights gave us honesty before we were ready for it. I nodded. They forced it, and days taught us how to keep it. That felt right. Later that night, lying in bed, curtains open to the city glow, I realized something else. If Julian hadn't shown up when he did, if we hadn't met in the quiet, in the tired honesty of night, maybe we wouldn't have seen each other as clearly. Maybe we'd have hidden behind daylight versions of ourselves. But nights don't let you hide. They ask who you are when no one's watching. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they give you someone who sees you anyway. Julian rolled over, half asleep, arm finding me without thinking. Hey, he murmured. Yeah. Still glad you scared me in that elevator, I laughed softly, pulling him closer. Me too. The night outside was calm, ordinary, but inside, everything felt exactly where it was supposed to be.